I have been married to my wife Sarah for 8 years. We have a son, Marcus, who is 6 years old. I am 32, she is 29, and we live in Ohio. I work as a network administrator at a medium-sized company and earn a good salary, around $75,000 a year. Sarah used to work part-time at a dental clinic, but 2 years ago she decided to stay home with Marcus. I was totally supportive of her decision. She was only working to pay for full childcare, and we could live comfortably on my income. Everything was fine until about 6 months ago, when I started noticing some subtle, barely noticeable changes in Sarah's behavior. It wasn't a drastic change, but the little things started to add up. She was constantly on her phone, and at first it didn't seem like anything unusual. Who isn't glued to their phone these days? But then she started turning it over when I entered the room or taking it with her to the bathroom. She went to bed late, claiming she was watching Netflix or reading articles, but I saw her switching screens when I crept up behind her. She also started talking about losing her sense of self as a wife and mother. I understood what she meant. Being a housewife is hard. I suggested she use this time to get back into a hobby, maybe even work part-time if she wanted to. I'm not the suspicious type, and I'm more of a straight-up person. So I figured that if something was going on, we'd talk about it like adults. Evasion and a break. But Sarah never said it outright. She kept saying she needed space to figure out what was really important in her life. I even suggested she see a family counselor. She didn't reject the idea, but said she wasn't ready, that she needed time to sort things out. Then, 4 months ago, she told me she needed a break from our marriage. Not a divorce. She just needed to find herself for a while. She told me, "I feel like I'm in prison, and I need to find myself again, the person I was before I became someone's wife and someone's mother." She asked if she could live with her parents for a few weeks, or maybe a month, and if she could take Marcus with her so he could stay in her life, but she could create some distance. Her parents lived only 40 minutes away, in a small town. It wasn't like she was moving across the country. I wasn't thrilled with the idea. When someone suggests taking a break from your daily married life, it means they've already crossed a psychological boundary or, worse, gone on the offensive against the other person. But Sarah told me that it wasn't about me or us. She just needed a little break. She said she still loved me but was very confused and wanted to break out of the rut we had been stuck in for so long. I didn't push it because, even though I didn't agree, I didn't want to overreact and take away her freedom, so I reluctantly agreed. Sarah packed up her things and Marcus's things and moved in with her parents. We agreed that she would bring him over on weekends and that we would talk every couple of days to see how things were going. The break was supposed to last 4 to 6 weeks. The first week was strange. Without Marcus, who usually filled the space, the house felt strangely empty, especially at the time when he usually went to bed. Sarah sent me messages with updates and photos of Marcus, which I was grateful for, but most of our conversations were forced and superficial. We talked about work, her parents, Marcus, but never about our relationship or what she was figuring out. But this week, Sarah had been very active on social media. She had never been a big fan of Facebook or Instagram, but now she was sharing photos of herself at coffee shops, on hiking trails, and at local events, often with captions like "exploring new paths" or "rediscovering joy." Some of the photos were clearly taken by someone else, but she never revealed who it was. When I mustered up the courage to ask her about it, she explained that she wanted to meet new people and make new friends because she had been isolated for so long as a stay-at-home mom. Then around the 3rd week, Marcus started begging us to let him come home and asking if Mom and Dad were getting divorced, like his friend's parents. I told him that Mom had gone to visit his grandparents and that we would all be together soon. But, to be honest, even I was starting to wonder. Sarah extended her vacation even longer. At first, she said she needed another week for me to make a decision, then 2, then maybe until the end of the month. Every time I asked her to give me a straight answer, she lashed out at me for pressuring her and not giving her the space she needed. so I decided to investigate. I'm a network administrator. I know my way around technology. I looked at her phone records and saw that she was constantly, for hours at a time and usually in the middle of the night, texting and calling one number. She didn't even know the area code. It wasn't a local number and wasn't even close to where her parents lived. I ran the number through a database and found that it was registered to Kevin from Portland, Oregon. I checked his Facebook. He was 26, unemployed, and living with his mom, according to his posts, and trying to make a name for himself as a musician and build an audience on a streaming service. His profile was filled with rants about how no one understood his art, bitches, and relationships. Not particularly inspiring. But it got worse. Sarah had been liking and commenting on his posts for the past 7 months, before she first mentioned that she needed a break. Their first interactions were pretty cute. He would post his music. She would respond. But soon they started flirting and apparently moved on to private chats and calls. I felt physically sick. And you know what? When Sarah supposedly went on a journey to find herself, she was actually chasing an illusion with an unemployed guy who lived in his mother's basement. I didn't say anything to her right away. I didn't want to make a scene, especially because of Marcus and our legal situation. I started gathering evidence, screenshots of her public confessions, his written assignment from Purdue that coincided too closely with the start of my break, her posts about new connections and opening her heart, even our phone records with dozens of messages, not to mention hours of conversations. Then one day she called him and said she needed to extend the break indefinitely. She said she believed she could turn her life around. She talked about how she might be happier in a new place, where there were more opportunities and a calmer pace of life. I asked where, and she said maybe the West Coast. And then, she said, everything fell into place. This wasn't just an emotional fling. She was going to leave Oregon with Kevin and take Marcus with her. I just talked to her and told her what she was about to do. At first, she was evasive, but she said she was exploring all options to create a better future for herself and Marcus. I made it clear that I wasn't going to let her take my child to the other side of the country. She said Ohio wasn't right for either of us, and that I could come to Ohio if I wanted to, hell, even live there if I wanted to, stay in their world. I insisted that we sit down face to face. She agreed. The next day, I made it to Murray's parents' town with physical evidence, screenshots of messages, call logs, Kevin's public posts. I laid all my cards on the table and told her I knew the truth. It wasn't a breakup, it was an affair with a guy who couldn't even take care of himself. Sarah blushed. She convinced me that things weren't what I believed them to be, and that Kevin was a friend who understood her. She said it was emotional, not physical. I told her it didn't matter. She had been lying to me for months and had even planned to run away with our son to the other side of the country without telling me. She said she was just trying it out, and then she started telling me how bad she felt, how he made her feel seen and alive, all the things she said I never did. I told her she could chase whatever damn dream she wanted, but Marcus wasn't going to Oregon to play house with some hipster she'd known for 4 short months. She said I was controlling her and that she had just as much right as I did to decide what was best for our son. She even claimed that Kevin was good with kids and that Marcus would have a better chance with him. Then I told her that I had already called a divorce lawyer and was planning to file for divorce this week. If she wanted to run away to Oregon, she could go, but Marcus was staying in Ohio with his school, his friends, and a normal parent who didn't do crazy things. She exploded, accusing me of doing everything I could to destroy her happiness, using Marcus against her, and ruining her only chance at a normal life. I said that Kali had ruined everything by cheating on me, and now she was planning to take our son out of state, to live with a man she had never even met. She admitted that she and Denton had never met, but said their connection was real. We argued. She insisted it was all for Marcus. I would have to leave everything familiar and unfamiliar that was my home, and go live with my mother and some strange, brooding man who worked as a pressure gauge reader and also had no income. Finally, she told me that I couldn't scare her into staying in a marriage and a life she hated. I asked her if she wanted me to let her go. Marcus, I never let her go. She gathered the documents I had prepared and then said she needed time to think things over, ironic, considering she had already been given 4 months to do so. That same day, I went to my lawyer and filed for divorce on the grounds of marital infidelity. I filed for full custody of Marcus, stating that she had tried to move him to another area, which was not in Marcus's best interests. The lawyer told me I had a very good case, as the evidence would be very valuable. That evening, I called Sarah's parents and told them what was going on. They were stunned. Sarah said she needed some space, not because of Kevin or moving to Oregon. Her father was outraged by the deception. Her mother was concerned about what Marcus must be going through. The next day, Sarah called me in tears, furious that I had filed for divorce and talked to her parents. She said I had caught her off guard and ruined any chance of reconciliation. I told her that she had missed her chance the day she lied, cheated, and tried to kidnap my son, even though I had no intention of separating him from her. She insisted that she hadn't made a final decision and was just thinking things through. I also reminded Sarah that she had talked to Kevin about Marcus, about how they would make him part of their future life in Oregon. She didn't even deny it. I had screenshots. In his feed, Kevin wrote things like, "Can't wait to meet the little man," and that he was ready to step into the role of the father he needs. In the weeks that followed, everything happened very quickly. She hired a lawyer and fought for primary custody, arguing that she had been Marcus's primary caregiver for the 2 years since she quit her job at a pharmacy to stay home with him. But her lawyer had a hard time convincing the court to forcibly turn Marcus's life upside down, taking him away from his home, school, friends, and relatives, and handing him over to a man she had met online who had neither a steady job nor a place to live. The court issued a temporary custody order. I was to care for Marcus during the school week, and Sarah was to care for him on weekends, but only within the state of Ohio. The judge's order prohibited her from taking him out of the state without court approval, which temporarily thwarted her plan to flee to Oregon. Sarah was furious about these restrictions. She accused me of abusing the law to control her and prevent her from starting a new life. She said that Kevin understood everything very well and could even move back to Ohio, where she lived. This made me laugh. Kevin couldn't afford rent in Oregon, let alone the cost of living, which, as cheap as dirt, would have made it cheaper than Ohio. I said, "We need to keep Marcus informed of everything that's going on." I kept it very simple and age-appropriate. I told him, because sometimes grown-ups fight and decide to live apart until they work things out. He seemed to take the change better than we did, perhaps because he was back in his room, in familiar surroundings, with his friends. About 6 weeks after I filed for divorce, Sarah came to pick up Marcus for the weekend and told me she had been thinking a lot. She had come to talk to me about the possibility of saving our marriage. Her relationship with Kevin had opened her eyes to what was missing in our relationship, and perhaps if we both worked on it, we could start over. I said I wasn't interested. I didn't trust a person who, as I believed, had lied to my face for 3 months and tried to take our son 2,000 miles away to live with a man she found on the internet. She didn't consider it a romance, because according to her, they hadn't touched each other yet. She explained that she had broken up with Kevin because she believed their relationship was preventing them from raising their child together. I asked her directly, "Did you leave because it was wrong or because the court's custody decision prevented you from staying?" She couldn't answer me directly. She began to evade the question and then said, in a strange and illogical manner, that her priorities had now changed because the legal problems she had gotten herself into had just hit her. Then I realized that she never broke up with Kevin because of guilt, but because she deliberately put our relationship on hold when the court became impossible. Now she's coming to me as a second option, most likely still leaving the door open for Kevin, and that's just not cool. I told her I didn't want to be her plan B, that I wasn't going to be a consolation prize to wait around for while she figured out how to fit her romance into our custody arrangement. She said I was being ridiculous and ungrateful, considering how hard she was trying to make things work. But I told her that the only reason she even agreed to steer our marriage was so she wouldn't have to move to Oregon. After that, the divorce proceedings dragged on for months. Her lawyer tried to make all kinds of arguments so she could spend more time with Marcus or take him with her. None of them worked. She couldn't prove that moving to Oregon would be in Marcus's best interest. And the fact that it was a different state and that she was moving there for a man she met online and started dating, that didn't help her case either. In the end, I was granted primary custody of the child. Sarah was allowed to see Marcus every other weekend and take turns spending holidays with him. But the court ruled that she still had to pay at least nominal child support because I was bearing part of the burden of supporting the child, and now that she was no longer a homemaker, she might need to find a 9-to-5 job. We were both ordered by the court not to move more than 100 miles away without prior permission from the judge and a custody modification hearing. Sarah rented a small apartment about 20 minutes from our house so she could work at another dental clinic. She seems to have accepted, for now, that her dream of Oregon is not going to happen, but I'm almost certain she's still in touch with Kevin. Even her social media, which is filled with cryptic nonsense about new beginnings and being open to possibilities, suggests that she liked this guy when he was just starting out, because she found him attractive, and because he seemed different, not like everyone else, not because she felt like one of the less attractive girls, which is much less scandalous than sleeping with a married man. And she fed me the same line about doors left open when she had apparently been making plans with him for some time. Marcus has adapted well. He's back on track, has a good routine, is doing well in school, and doesn't ask too many questions about the divorce anymore. Mom and Dad live in different houses, but they love him very much, and he knows that. And to be honest, Sarah is a pretty good mom when she's not drinking and focused on raising her kids instead of the men she meets online. It was a rude awakening for me. You know how people say when someone breaks up with you that they need a break to find themselves? What they really mean is, I found someone else, and they're trying to figure out how to leave politely without burning any bridges. I don't feel bitter that my marriage didn't work out. If Sarah was that stingy, it's better that she left. But I'm angry that she even thought of using Marcus as a pawn to get everything and lose nothing, and possibly ruin his whole life, and probably his family's life, because of a guy who couldn't even keep his finances in order. Right now, the only thing that matters to me is being the best single dad I can be. I want to provide Marcus with stability, love, and a normal life. If Sarah wants to date hookers, she can. But she's not dragging our son into her wild sex life. So yes, I filed for divorce while she was secretly planning to move Marcus across the country. She'll still claim that she was just looking around. But her actions spoke louder than words. Sarah has been complying with the terms of the custody agreement, and everything has been fine for the past 2 months. Marcus is doing well in school and has adapted surprisingly quickly to his new life. She picks him up on Friday evenings and brings him back on Sunday evenings. They spend the weekend as usual, going to parks, to the movies, and visiting her parents. But last week, something happened that pretty much confirmed my worst fears. Marcus told me that Mom's friend Kevin joined them during video calls over the weekend. I asked if Kevin talked to him much, and he said Kevin said a couple of things about school, what he likes to do, and stuff like that. I called Sarah immediately. She dismissed my concerns. Kevin was nice, she said, and it was nothing serious, just a few video chats. I strictly forbade the stranger from Oregon from talking to my son, especially a man with whom she had emotionally cheated on me. Sarah became defensive. There was nothing strange about Kevin. They had been talking for almost a year, and he genuinely cared about her life as it was with Marcus. Kevin had always wanted to meet Marcus, and she believed it would be good for them to meet, at least virtually. I told her that our custody agreement stated very clearly that we couldn't introduce Marcus to a new boyfriend or girlfriend without discussing it with the other parent first. Strictly speaking, Kevin wasn't her boyfriend. They had never dated and had a complicated relationship. And then it suddenly dawned on me. Sarah was still trying to repair her relationship with Kevin. Since she couldn't go to Oregon, she was probably telling Kevin everything we weren't allowed to tell him by law, and they were planning how to introduce him into Marcus's life, initially, obviously, remotely, through video chat or something like that. I made it clear to him that this contact was now off the table. If I found out that she had allowed Kevin to see Marcus again, I would go to court and demand a change in the custody arrangement. I manipulated her, criticized her for talking to certain people, for choosing who Marcus could see. I told her that protecting my child from her lover was not control. It was called responsibility. In the end, she agreed to stop the video calls, but she kept saying that I was overreacting. She even suggested that maybe Kevin would be a good influence on Marcus someday. I told her that was a long way off. No Kevin, no dreams of a blended family. Not now, not ever. We said goodbye, and Sarah told me she understood, but she thought I was being unfair to Kevin, who she said had been kind and supportive to her throughout this whole ordeal. I told her, sponsoring an event and helping a mother run away from her child across the country is not kindness. It's manipulation. Since then, I've tried not to do that. I ask Marcus what he's doing on the weekends and generally check in on him regularly. It seems like the calls to Kevin have stopped for now, but I don't want to rely on Sarah to maintain these boundaries indefinitely. Sarah said she'd like to take Marcus on a longer vacation, to visit 2 new places they haven't been to together. In search of photo trends, I asked where exactly and for how long, to which she replied, as usual, vaguely, no specific details. Then, 2 weeks ago, when Marcus came home after the weekend, he casually said, "Mom was talking about seeing big mountains and meeting someone who's been wanting to see me for a long time." That made me wary. I politely asked if he would tell me more. She showed me a picture of mountains and a big house, and maybe we were going to visit her special friend who lives very far away, he said. I knew immediately that Sarah was planning to take Marcus to Oregon to meet Kevin, despite the court order that clearly stated that no one was allowed to take Marcus out of the state without permission. That evening, I called Sarah. I asked her about it directly. She admitted that she had been thinking about taking Marcus to Oregon for a week during his summer vacation so he could see another part of the country and finally meet Kevin in person. "No way," I told her. I informed her that the custody order did not allow out-of-state travel, regardless of whether we were divorced or not. But she responded that she did not believe the travel restriction was permanent while the divorce was pending, and that she had the right to take Marcus anywhere she wanted when he was in her custody. I repeated that the travel restrictions were contained in the permanent custody order, not the temporary one. Sarah switched gears and started berating me for holding Marcus captive in Ohio and depriving him of experiences. Kevin had been counting down the days to see Marcus for months, she said, and had made plans, a trip to the mountains and a trip to a recording studio where she had been told he would be working on his music. I said I didn't care what Kevin was so excited about. He wasn't coming to see Marcus. Period. You always call me irrational, Sarah. Marcus deserved to share some people in my life with me, especially those who could become a permanent part of hers. Then she dropped another bombshell on me. She hadn't moved to Oregon to be with me. I had moved to Ohio to be with her. Kevin was ready for a real change, she said, and was looking for a job in our area so they could build a life together there. I asked her, "Did you really believe that a guy who couldn't even get his life together in his own hometown, he was living with his mom and dad, could get his life together on the other side of the country?" Having her and Marcus in his life gave Kevin a purpose. It was his fresh start, she said. But I didn't see it that way. To me, it meant that Sarah had no intention of letting Sarah go. at least not according to the original plan. He raced across Ohio looking for her as if she were his, not his, on a mission to discover what was hidden beneath the icy shell of his heart. And the vacation? It was just a ploy to drag Marcus into a new story. I said it didn't matter where the meeting was, Oregon, Ohio, or anywhere else. Marcus would not meet with Kevin. I said that in that case I didn't care, and who was I to tell her who Marcus could or couldn't date? I told her straight up that if she ran away with Marcus out of state, I would sue her for interference with custody and then seek to have her parental rights terminated. She called me vindictive and said I was threatening her. I was honest with her and said, "I'm just protecting my child from your poor judgment and emotional attachment." The next day, I called my lawyer. I told him everything about Sarah's new arrangement with Kevin, the planned sleepovers out of state, and her unwavering confidence that she would win the custody battle. He said, "We can always file a motion to modify custody and ask the court to take more stringent measures and possibly reduce the time if she continues to violate the boundaries. So we are filing a motion with the judge requesting, to reiterate, Sarah is not permitted under any circumstances to remove Marcus from his state of residence without the written consent of the court. Do not allow Sarah to drive or stay overnight away from home without verifying her whereabouts. Require Sarah to provide you with a detailed travel plan, including information about where she will be staying for all overnight trips, even to Ohio. This would result in her being found in contempt of court if she even attempted to make such an unauthorized trip in the future. This was too prescriptive." Sarah's lawyer responded by arguing that she should have the right to travel with Marcus while he is in her custody, provided she gives advance notice. They pointed out that these restrictions are negatively affecting Marcus's relationship with Sarah, as well as his development. At last week's hearing, she testified under oath about Sarah. She admitted that she had been on Kevin's side the whole time and had been involved in their communication. She admitted that they had been planning Marcus's appearance for several months. She even confirmed that Kevin's move to Ohio was a very serious matter. The judge was not impressed. He called her a liar who had made terrible choices. "It has become clear that she never intended to comply with the original custody agreement," he said, "and bringing Marcus to a man with whom she was having an affair was a breach of trust and common sense, especially without my knowledge." Sarah is prohibited from taking Marcus out of Ohio for any reason without written permission from the court. If she attempts to do so, custody will be immediately suspended. Sarah must not introduce Marcus as her boyfriend to her friends and must not discuss this with me or the court. If such an introduction does occur, he said, I will believe that it will be at least gradual, supervised, and in Marcus's best interests. Sarah was furious. Several dozen supporters of Ms. Bailey showed up to argue that the punishment was overly harsh for a woman trying to start her life over. "The judge is really treating her like some kind of criminal, but she's a mother," said 76-year-old Dara Johnson. Later, I spoke with her outside the courtroom, and she vowed that this wasn't the end, that she would still find a way to involve Kevin in Marcus's life without violating the court's rules. I explained to her, "Kevin will not be in our son's life. If she continues down this path, she will only waste more time on Marcus." I shouted that Kevin wasn't going anywhere and that she had better get used to it. Since then, Sarah has been complying with the new custody arrangements, but I can see how much she is suffering. Marcus no longer mentions Kevin or the video calls, but I can't help wondering if Sarah and Kevin have really stopped communicating altogether. Most likely, she is just being more careful to hide it. I am monitoring the situation closely. If necessary, I will go back to court. I will not let her drag our son into her fantasy of living with some guy she met on the internet. Nothing changes the fact that Marcus needs stability, not to be used in his mother's romantic drama with a stranger who lives 3 time zones away from us. That's how things stand. Sarah still takes Marcus every weekend, but now with burdensome conditions. I have a legal right to ensure Marcus's safety and protection from Sarah's unreasonable decisions. And if she tries anything again, I'll be ready.